In a tranquil grove, the Buddha sat beneath a blooming tree, his gaze serene and his heart open. He called forth his disciples, their robes brushing the soft earth as they gathered around. Then, a wandering merchant approached, his face marked by frustration and weariness. "Master," the merchant began, his voice betraying a restless spirit. The Buddha observed Ananda's furrowed brow and turned his compassionate gaze towards him. "Ananda," he began, "your heart is troubled. Speak freely, for the burden you carry need not remain unspoken." Ananda hesitated, his hands tightening in his lap, the weight of perfection pressing heavily on his spirit. "Master," Ananda said finally, his voice tremulous, "I seek perfection in my actions. Yet I find no peace in my striving." The other disciples listened intently. The grove hushed in anticipation of the Buddha's response. The Buddha smiled, a gentle curve that reflected infinite understanding and patience. "Perfection," the Buddha began, "is a concept that captures the mind but eludes the heart. Let us explore this together." He reached for a clay bowl resting beside him, its surface aged and cracked, yet still intact. Holding it up, he asked, "What do you see before you?" "A bowl, Master," replied a disciple, their voice steady and sure. "It is cracked and weathered, yet it holds its form." The Buddha nodded. "And does this bowl, with its imperfections, fulfill its purpose?" The disciples murmured in unison, "Yes, it carries water despite its flaws." The Buddha turned to Ananda, his gaze unwavering. "Consider this bowl, Ananda," he said. "If I were to discard it in pursuit of a flawless one, what would I lose?" Ananda lowered his eyes, reflecting on the question that pierced his soul like an arrow. "You would lose the use of the bowl." "Master," Ananda replied softly, the words resonating with a deeper truth. The Buddha placed the bowl gently on the ground, his movements deliberate and filled with meaning. "In seeking flawlessness, Ananda, do we not overlook the purpose of the imperfect?" Ananda's eyes filled with an emotion he could not name, a mixture of revelation and sorrow. "But Master," he said, his voice pleading, "should we not strive to better ourselves, to achieve excellence in all we do?" The Buddha's smile widened, his eyes sparkling with both gravity and lightness. "To strive," the Buddha said, "is the nature of growth, but to grasp at perfection is to bind oneself in chains." He gestured to the wildflowers growing nearby, their colors vibrant yet uneven, their petals unique yet harmonized. "Do these flowers suffer for their imperfections, Ananda?" The young monk shook his head, the simple beauty of the flowers leaving him humbled. "No, Master," he admitted, his voice faint yet sincere. "They thrive as they are, untouched by the need for perfection." The Buddha inclined his head, acknowledging the truth in Ananda's words. "Understand this, Ananda," the Buddha continued, his tone gentle yet firm. "Imperfection is not a hindrance but a teacher. It reveals the nature of acceptance." He gestured for the disciples to rise, their movements quiet and reverent. "Let us walk, for there is more to see and learn." The disciples followed the Buddha along a winding path that led to a still, clear pond. The water mirrored the sky above, its surface calm and unbroken. The Buddha stopped and pointed to a fallen leaf floating upon the water, its edges curled and its veins exposed. "What do you see in this leaf?" the Buddha asked, his question directed to all. A disciple stepped forward, their voice thoughtful and measured. "A leaf that has aged and fallen, yet it rests with grace upon the water." The Buddha nodded, the wisdom of the disciple's observation resonating with his own. "This leaf," the Buddha said, "once clung to its branch, vibrant and green. Now it rests, content in its impermanence." He turned once more to Ananda, his gaze steady and filled with compassion. "Do you see, Ananda, how the leaf finds peace not in perfection but in acceptance? Ananda stared at the leaf, its journey from tree to water unfolding before him as a silent parable. I see, Master, he whispered, his voice trembling with the weight of realization. Yet, I fear letting go of my pursuit, for it has defined me. The Buddha laid a gentle hand on Ananda's shoulder. The touch as light as a breeze yet profound in its intention. To let go, he said, is not to lose yourself but to find your true nature. To embrace what is, rather than what should be. The disciples stood in silence, the rustle of leaves and the song of birds enveloping them like a sacred hymn. Ananda's tears fell silently, the beginning of a release he had long resisted. Master, he said at last, his voice breaking but firm, I wish to learn the art of acceptance. The Buddha smiled, his approval as radiant as the sun breaking through the clouds. Then, Ananda, you have already taken the first step. The journey to acceptance begins not with perfection but with recognition. He led the disciples back to the grove, their hearts lighter yet fuller, their minds clearer yet more expansive. As they sat once more beneath the blooming tree, the Buddha spoke again, his words flowing like a stream nourished by an endless source. Ananda, he said, and all who gather here, remember this life's beauty lies not in its perfection but in its purpose. A cracked bowl, a floating leaf, a blooming flower, each teaches us that to live is to accept. To accept is to find peace. The disciples bowed their heads, the weight of the Buddha's teachings settling within them as seeds awaiting growth. Ananda's brow, once furrowed, now bore a gentle curve, a nascent smile born of understanding and release. And in that grove, under the Buddha's gaze, they began to learn not the art of perfection but the grace of imperfection. Another day, another lesson unfolded beneath the shade of the ancient Bodhi tree, where the Buddha quietly observed his disciples. They gathered with reverence, their hearts open to the wisdom that flowed like a tranquil river. Ananda sat among them, still contemplating the teachings on imperfection shared days before. The Buddha carried 2 clay pots, one filled with clear water and the other containing murky, unsettled water. His disciples watched curiously as the Buddha placed both pots on the ground, their presence a silent question. Behold these pots, the Buddha began, his voice resonating like a calm stream. One holds clarity, the other, confusion. In the center of the clearing hung a spider's web, its delicate strands glistening with morning dew. The Buddha pointed to the web, his expression serene and contemplative. Look closely, my disciples, he said, his voice like the rustle of leaves. What do you see before you? A disciple stepped forward, their eyes fixed on the intricate web. Master, I see a delicate structure. Imperfect yet functional, they replied with thoughtful precision. The Buddha nodded, his approval evident in the gentle tilt of his head. The spider spun this web, the Buddha said, not for beauty, but for sustenance and survival. Yet, it is beautiful nonetheless. He turned to Ananda, whose gaze was fixed on the web, his thoughts tangled as the strands before him. Ananda, the Buddha continued, what do you perceive in this fragile creation? Ananda hesitated, his voice cautious. Master, the web is uneven in places, its gaps apparent, yet, it serves its purpose without faltering. The Buddha's smile emerged, soft and unhurried, like the rising sun. Indeed, Ananda, it serves. And in its imperfection lies its purpose, its resilience. The Buddha's words hung in the air, resonating with the silent reverence of his disciples. He stepped closer to the web, his movements measured and intentional. Consider this, Ananda, if the spider sought perfection, would it ever complete its task? Would its hunger be sated? Ananda's brow furrowed, the question weaving itself into the fabric of his thoughts. No, Master, he replied after a pause, his voice steady yet contemplative. The pursuit of perfection would delay its survival. its very reason for weaving. The Buddha extended a hand towards the web, his fingers brushing the air around its fragile edges. Life, he said, is like the spider's web, a balance between effort and acceptance. To cling to perfection is to lose purpose. He motioned for the disciples to sit, their robes billowing gently as they settled on the earth. Ananda, the Buddha said, your heart seeks excellence, yet you carry the weight of unattainable ideals. Let us explore this further. He gestured to the trees around them, their trunks gnarled and their branches sprawling in directions dictated by time and circumstance. Do these trees suffer for their imperfections, their crooked growths? The Buddha asked, his voice imbued with calm inquiry. The disciples shook their heads, their eyes taking in the natural majesty of the grove. No, Master, one replied, their voice resonating with clarity. They thrive as they are, each unique and unburdened. The Buddha nodded, his gaze sweeping across the grove with infinite compassion. Ananda, he said, you strive for perfection as though it were the source of peace. Yet, peace lies in accepting imperfection. Ananda lowered his eyes, the truth of the Buddha's words settling within him like a seed awaiting growth. The spider, the Buddha continued, weaves not for flawlessness but for necessity. It accepts the gaps, the uneven strands, and continues. He gestured once more to the web, its dew-laden threads shimmering like jewels in the sun. And in its acceptance, it thrives. Ananda's breath deepened, the lesson weaving itself into his soul with quiet persistence. Master, he said finally, his voice tinged with vulnerability, how does one let go of the need for perfection when it feels so ingrained? The Buddha's gaze softened, his voice now like the gentle flow of a stream. To let go, Ananda, is to see the beauty in imperfection, to embrace the purpose that flaws reveal. He gestured for the disciples to rise, their movements harmonious like the unfolding of petals. They walked once more, the path winding through the grove until they reached a shaded pond. The Buddha knelt beside the water, its surface rippling with reflections of light and shadow. Observe, he said, his voice serene yet commanding, how the water reflects the sky, imperfect yet whole. Ananda knelt beside him, his reflection mingling with the ripples on the pond's surface. Master, he said, his voice quiet, I see now that the reflection changes, yet it remains true to the essence it mirrors. The Buddha smiled, his approval as gentle as the breeze stirring the trees. Life, the Buddha said, is like this pond, ever changing, ever shifting. To accept imperfection is to find harmony in change. He rose, his movements fluid as water, and gestured for the disciples to return to the grove. As they sat once more beneath the shade of the ancient Bodhi tree, the Buddha spoke again, his words flowing like an endless stream. Ananda, he said, and all who gather here, remember this: the spider weaves with purpose, not with the pursuit of flawlessness. Let its web be a symbol of life's balance. Ananda bowed his head, his heart lighter yet fuller, the weight of perfection beginning to dissolve. And in the grove, under the Buddha's timeless gaze, the disciples learned to see the web not as a flawed creation, but as a reflection of life's delicate balance. Another day, another moment of profound learning began as the Buddha gathered his disciples by the tranquil lake's edge. The water shimmered, its surface undulating gently with the breeze. Reflections scattered across ripples like fragments of truth. Ananda sat closest to the Buddha, his heart seeking clarity yet burdened by doubt. Ananda asked, Master, what if humanity's pursuit of modern advancements further distances us from this truth of interconnectedness? Buddha's eyes twinkled with wisdom. Modern advancements can serve interconnectedness when guided by compassion and awareness, not by greed or disregard. Master, Ananda said finally, his voice low, I fear I fail to embrace imperfection. even as I strive to understand its meaning. The Buddha's eyes warmed with compassion, his understanding boundless as the lake before them. Let us explore this together. Ananda, for imperfection holds many truths. He pointed to the lake's surface, its mirror-like reflection interrupted by ripples. Observe the water, the Buddha said, his voice steady yet gentle. Does its beauty diminish when disturbed by the wind? A disciple spoke, their tone contemplative. It humbles the speaker and elevates the listener. The young disciple nodded, his heart absorbing the profound simplicity of the teaching. Indeed, the ripples reveal beauty in change, not flawlessness. He turned to Ananda, his gaze inviting reflection. Ananda, can you see how the disturbance enhances, rather than detracts, from the lake's essence? Ananda's eyes rested on the rippling surface, his thoughts flowing with its rhythm. I see, Master, he said softly. But how does this teach us to embrace imperfection within ourselves? The Buddha gestured to a fallen branch floating upon the water, its edges worn by time. This branch, the Buddha said, was once part of a tree, vibrant and upright. Now it drifts, yet its purpose remains. He turned to the disciples, his gaze encompassing all. Does the branch's journey end with its fall, or does it continue in another form? A disciple replied, their voice filled with quiet wonder. It continues, Master, serving as nourishment for the lake and home for creatures within it. The Buddha smiled, his approval unwavering. Exactly. Life transforms, and imperfection is not an end but a continuation. Ananda's breath deepened, the truth weaving into the fabric of his being. Master, he said, his voice trembling, how do we honor the imperfections within ourselves and find peace in them? The Buddha's gaze softened further, his presence radiating solace. To honor imperfection, Ananda, the Buddha said, is to recognize its role in growth, to see its beauty and its lessons. He rose, his movements fluid, and gestured for the disciples to follow. They walked along the lake's edge, the path winding through shadows and light. The group arrived at a secluded spot where lotus flowers bloomed, their petals imperfect yet radiant. The Buddha pointed to the flowers, their elegance undeniable despite their flaws. Observe the lotus, he said, how it rises from the mud, imperfect yet whole. Ananda knelt beside the flowers, his fingers brushing a petal that curled at its edge. Master, he said, his voice hushed, the lotus thrives despite the mud, its imperfections seemingly insignificant. The Buddha smiled, his approval as warm as the sun overhead. The mud nourishes the lotus, Ananda, the Buddha said, and its imperfections remind us of the conditions that allow life to flourish. He gestured to the disciples, inviting them to sit among the blooms, their robes mingling with the colors of nature. Ananda, the Buddha continued, your pursuit of perfection blinds you to the beauty that flaws reveal. Let the lotus guide your understanding. Ananda's brow furrowed, the weight of realization pressing gently upon him. Master, he said, I wish to see the beauty you describe, but it feels elusive. The Buddha's voice softened, his words flowing like the stream that nourished the blooms. To see, Ananda, is not to grasp but to let go, to accept without judgment. He motioned for the group to rise, their movements in harmony with the breeze carrying their robes. They returned to the grove, the shade of the ancient Bodhi tree inviting reflection and peace. The Buddha sat beneath the tree, his gaze serene as he addressed the disciples. Life, he said, is like the ripples, the branch, the lotus, imperfect yet profound. Ananda listened intently, his heart lightening as the lesson settled within him like seeds awaiting growth. Master, he said finally, his voice steady, I wish to embrace imperfection as the ripples embrace the wind, as the lotus embraces the mud. The Buddha's smile widened, his approval as radiant as the sun breaking through clouds. Then, Ananda, you have taken the first steps on the path to peace. Acceptance is the beginning of freedom. The disciples bowed their heads, their hearts touched by the simplicity and depth of his words. As the sun set, its golden light filtering through the grove, the Buddha spoke once more, his voice filled with timeless wisdom. Remember, Ananda, and all who gather here, life's beauty lies not in perfection but in purpose. In the harmony of imperfections, the disciples rose, their spirits lighter yet fuller, their minds clearer yet more expansive, and in the grove, under the Buddha's gaze, they began to see the ripples on the water, the petals of the lotus, and the journey of the fallen branch, not as flaws, but as the poetry of existence. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.